Hi guys, bunch of unthinkable bans happened last week, and half of the people thinks that there is a new era of tech censorship in US. Another half says there is nothing to worry about, Trump didn't follow the rule and got banned by the private companies. Let's look a bit deeper and understand who is right. The story started from Trump being blocked on Facebook. From the left point of view, Trump said that the election was stolen and asked his followers to take over the Capitol, and they started violence, and that's why he's banned from Facebook. There are two issues there. Trump has never asked for violence and asked people to walk peacefully. The direct quote from his speech, "I know that everyone here will soon be marching over the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard." Another thing that Trump didn't violate any Facebook policy. Everything happened in real life, not on Facebook post. The official Zuckerberg statement was, "We believe the risk of allowing the president to continue to use our service during this period are simply too great. Therefore, we are extending the block that we have placed on his Facebook and Instagram account indefinitely, or at least for next 2 weeks until the peaceful transition of power is complete." This is very Marxist approach. Trump didn't violate any rules of our platform, but we decided to ban him because we think he's dangerous. But hey, Facebook is a private company, they can do whatever they want. In the same time, Trump was banned on Twitter for 12 hours. And in the meanwhile, he made a video when he was condemning all the violence and taking over the Capitol. Then after 12 hours, Trump's Twitter got unblocked and he tweeted the following: "The 75 million great American patriots who voted for me, America first, and Make America Great Again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form." Then he wrote his last tweet: "To all of those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th. Nothing about violence, right? But Twitter got his own opinion, and they released a statement. "Due to the ongoing tensions in the United States and an uptick in the global conversation in regards to the people who violently stormed the Capitol on January 6, these two tweets must be read in the context of broader events in the country, in the ways in which president's statements can be mobilized by different audiences, including the incite violence, as well as in the context of the pattern of behavior from his account in recent weeks." Basically, Trump's last two tweets contains a secret message, and we need a leftist expert to decrypt them. After assessing the language of these tweets against our glorification of violence policy, we have determined that these tweets are in violation of the glorification of violence policy, and the user at Real Donald Trump should be immediately permanently suspended from the service. I really appreciate Twitter didn't do a fully Marxist way as Facebook did. And they actually made 5 different points about why Trump violated this policy. 3 of them are not related to violence or to Trump's tweets, so I skipped them. There are 2 main ones which are really fun to read. The second tweet may also serve the encouragement for those potentially considering violent acts that the inauguration would be a safe target as he will not be attending. If Trump said, "Don't drink coffee in Starbucks anymore," Twitter would have interpreted this as a call for violence against Biden supporters, because after that tweet, none of the Trump supporters would go to Starbucks, so Starbucks basically is a safe target. Another great one. The use of the words American patriots to describe some of his supporters is also being interpreted as support for those committing violent acts in the US Capitol. Well, I fully agree with that. If Trump posted the American flag, it would have meant white supremacy and call for the extermination of all the minorities. Okay, either you pro-Trump or pro-Biden, all these arguments are completely silly and they look like Russian propaganda, which I'm very familiar with. If you compare this to BLM protests, there were way more violence and way more property damage, as well as way more casualties back then. And there were thousands of tweets from Democrats which were glorifying the violence in a very explicit way. And in the same time, taking over the Capitol was condemned by the majority of Republicans, including Donald Trump. But BLM violence and looting was never condemned by the majority of Democrats. This doesn't sound right. Some of you might say that racial justice cannot be compared to false claims of Trump's victory. Well, BLM is fully based on fake stories about racist policemen and innocent black guys. I've made several videos on this channel to debunk this kind of bullshit. The reality is that in both cases we have a bunch of crazy people who believe in conspiracy theories. If you tolerate BLM, you should also tolerate people who think that Trump won, independently whether it's true or not. I believe that Trump lost, and what he's doing is very damaging to the Republican Party. But in the same time, there were many irregularities and potentially some small-scale fraud. But I believe that none of this will change the end result. But the authorities could have done a better job explaining why all those irregularities are not valid or doesn't matter, instead of declaring all of this as some kind of a conspiracy theory. So again, if you're on the left, you might object that Twitter is a private company. They can create their own set of rules, interpret them in the way they want, and enforce them in some specific situation they want. And it's totally fine. Let Twitter declare it's an official pro-democratic resource, and it should be treated like a New York Times, not as a forum place. US is a free market society, so if you're banned on one social network and you have 75 million of people who wants to read you, there will be another platform which will take you and all your followers. Well, there is such a platform called Parler, which is basically a copy of Twitter but without a Marxist-style censorship. It's a much smaller platform with only 4 million of users, and it was created quite recently in 2018. It's funny, if you go on the leftist Wikipedia, you can read that Parler has a significant user base of Donald Trump supporters, conservatives, conspiracy theorists, and right-wing extremists. And then they have a bunch of links on the fake news. That's a very common leftist strategy to alternate the reality on Wiki. Anyway, the new level of censorship emerged. Google decided to ban and remove the app completely out of its store, with the formulation that app is not enforcing content moderation and allowing glorifying of violence. Although I can deny there were a bunch of violent posts on Parler, I don't think Google has an authority to decide what is violence and what is not. Every country has its own set of law, and the authorities should go after certain posts, not Google. But the truth is that Android users can still download applications outside of official store, so it's not the biggest problem. Apple decided to pull out the application as well after 24 hours notification to Parler. And it's a real problem because on iOS you can't really install random applications outside of official Apple Store. Basically, if you want your freedom and install any app you want, you need to use Android. Alternatively, if you don't have Parler app, you can still use browser and access to the website, which is probably not that bad. Well, the problem is that Amazon decided to ban Parler from its cloud services. Basically, if you're a smaller company, you decided to host everything on Amazon or Google Cloud because it's just cheaper for you. And that's what Parler did, assuming that Amazon is a very neutral company and they will never do something like that. But they were wrong, and Parler now is completely down, and it's quite unclear when they will restore it and if they ever restore it. Again, you might say that Amazon is a private company, they can do whatever they want. True, but it's clear that Apple, Google, and Amazon completely destroyed the app, which had a large base of Trump supporters. Think about this, there is an app which declares itself as a free speech alternative to Twitter, and you have a bunch of different users there from different countries. Then you have a bunch of software developers and investors, and all of them are completely against violence and maybe not even Trump supporters. And you as a company do your own business and follow US and international law. And then suddenly some private tech companies decided to wipe you out? Is it okay? I don't think so. The last but not least, there is a pity ban on QAnon merchandise on Amazon. Basically, you're not allowed to have a print with "We are Q" anymore. Again, I'm not a fan of QAnon theory, I think it's ridiculous. But you have another more dangerous conspiracy theory about a criminal from 2000 years ago who made a rebellion, and then he got convicted and crucified by Roman authorities. And some of the people think that he was a prophet of love and that he was actually resurrected. This is called Christianity. There were millions of people killed during the various disputes with another conspiracy theory called Islam. Why don't you ban these? Probably if you do, the government will go after you and tell you that you're discriminating against certain religions and it's not okay and you have to pay some fine. I suggest QAnon should register as a religious organization to prevent those kind of issues. And again, people who are selling QAnon merchandise are just normal businessmen, which are not related to QAnon theory, they just want to make some money. And because of this unexpected ban, some of these people will lose their money and some of them might even go bankrupt. Now the most important, why did they do this now, not earlier? The naive answer they're trying to push is attack on capital and American democracy. I don't think so, nothing really happened and Biden will be inaugurated on time. The real issue is that one day before the attack on the Capitol, there was a rerun in Georgia for US Senate, and two Democratic candidates won. which means that now President, Senate, and House are controlled by Democrats, and all those tech companies know that they will not be prosecuted within the next 2 years for anything Trump-related. There is a small issue here. You have a European Union which is known to fine big tech American companies with a large amount of money. Angela Merkel stated that banning Trump Twitter is problematic, clearly signaling that there will be some long-term consequences. What could it be? Pulling out Parler out of iOS App Store will make EU regulators to force Apple to allow install any applications from outside the App Store, in the same way as Android does. This will damage Apple's earning model, at least in EU. Other countries, including US, will eventually argue that this policy should be extended to all the App Stores worldwide. Apple's profit will definitely go down. Second, Amazon Cloud won't be treated as a safe harbor any longer. EU would create a bunch of different regulations to prohibit terminating the services without a court decision, or perhaps giving a mandatory monthly withdrawal of service notification. Third, EU will most likely make a huge fine against Google, Amazon, and Apple for destroying Parler because there were probably some users from European Union there, and it's a gross violation of competition law. Fourth, lots of regulations and general hostilities against US tech sectors across the world. I won't be surprised if some local alternatives will be emerged in European Union. This time government can give some preferential treatment for these newly created companies and discriminating against the US ones. To summarize, I think we live in a very horrible age when infantile socialists dictate free speech policies to big tech companies. But luckily we have other civilized countries like European Union which not okay with that. US tech companies has two options. Keep following the leftist agenda and eventually be outcompeted by foreign tech. Or kick out all the political commissars from their companies and return to era of free speech. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time, bye!